Welcome to The Friday Habit with Mark Labriola and Benjamin Manley. The Friday Habit is for small business owners, freelancers, and creatives who are ready to take their business to the next level. Join us as we discover how to apply the strategies we learned to grow our businesses, make more money, and live every day like it's Friday. All right, welcome to The Friday Habit. Ben, how are you doing?
How's it going, Mark? Oh, man, I'm doing good. I'm doing
so
well.
Good. Hey, well, today we have a very special guest. We got Cole Rodgers on the podcast today. He's the founder of School of Man. Cole's an entrepreneur, life coach, and speaker who is dedicated to helping men reach their full potential and live their best lives. Cole is, for over a decade, experience in coaching and mentoring, and has helped countless men achieve their goals in both their personal and professional lives. Cole, welcome to The Friday Habit.
Guys, I am extremely grateful to be here with you. In fact, that's how I like to start off any meeting, any podcast interview, or just when I just meet somebody, right? I think our world needs more gratitude in it. It helps us expand our perspective. And for me, I'm just here to leave people better than I find them. And I love what you're doing. I love everything about your mission. And I can't wait. This is going to be a ton of fun. This is right up my alley. So I don't want to suck up too much of the oxygen, but I'm ready to get after it.
All right. Well, hey, I got a would you rather.
Sure.
Or either or.
Okay.
Sauna or cold plunge?
Oh man, I do a lot of both. So I'm an ice bath junkie. And
Okay.
what I do, I'm fortunate enough, I do have a full-blown sauna, but then I also have a sauna attached to my pool. And I'm in Central Arkansas, so Little Rock, and the water will get down to my pool, high 30s, low 40s, and then my sauna gets up to 104. So what I do every week is do the cold plunge, but I go back and forth between that 104 and to the pool. I swim in it, tread water, and then I take cold showers. And then on the sauna side, man, I like it. I like to see how hot I can crank it up. Now I have an infrared here, but you can kind of biohack those by putting a wine cork on the thermostat and putting insulation on the top. So there's so many ways to do it. And for those that are listening, disclaimer: when you do that, you pretty much throw out the warranty of anything of any kind. So,
Right.
but I am very much addicted to the art of being limitless. And now I've not always been like that. Now, if you haven't watched Hemsworth documentary Limitless, go and watch it. It's great. But if you'll look at it in my library, you'll see books by Ben Greenfield, from Boundless to Aubrey Marcus with Own Your Day. But there's a program we run in School of Man called Fuel, Freedom Unlocked Equals Lasting Change, and that's really to help men keep the old man out of the body at the end of the day. So, but you'll see me doing a lot of wild and crazy stuff, and a lot of stuff I just don't post to social media, right?
Yeah, just your personal stuff. Well, hey, we have women who listen to our show too, but
Sure.
today we kind of just wanted to focus on what it means to be a man, and I would say this is that, and this is for me, my personal experience is that, I don't think I was demonstrated a lot of masculinity, and being a business owner, I have to. I have to engage in conflict. I have to close a sale. I have to fire somebody. I have to tell somebody that they need to improve. And, as I was kind of probably in my mid-30s, I kind of started to kind of evaluate myself and try to figure out, why are these things hard for me to do? Or why do I have a propensity to avoid conflict, And I think some of it I felt came down to was a level of masculinity that I lacked because I was never shown that, and so I'd love to kind of hear a little bit about your story, of how you kind of started and where how you kind of got into mentoring and coaching men.
Wow. And well, I'm not going to take you all the way back to childhood, because that would turn into 3 to 4 hour Jocko
This isn't,
podcasts,
yeah, this is
right?
not a Joe Rogan or a Jocko
Yeah,
podcast.
a long form podcast. I love those guys and listen to them, but I can definitely give you glimpses of my life, especially the ones that are heavily laden with meaning. So
Mm-hmm.
many of us, we forget all the great things that happen in our life because we've been trained to focus on the gaps. For if you if you give people a black and white picture, men and women both, majority of the time their eyes are going to fixate on the dark instead of the light. We've been taught since we were little kids, both men and women, to look at the gaps instead of saying, I got 17 out of 20 right. We're like, how many did you get wrong right out the gate, right? And that's just how our culture has been built over time. But kind of going back to your comment on conflict, and then I'll get into a little bit about my story and then, my entrepreneurial spirit, my business, and how I've developed that along the way. And of course, I'm not a sunshine, rainbows, and unicorns guy. I mean, I'm one of those that I give you the good, the bad, and the ugly of my life. I'm a perfectly flawed man. I think that's a very important attribute for any entrepreneur, any leader, especially if you're leading teams to walk into. Vulnerability is a key attribute of mine, but that has to be developed like a muscle. But going back to conflict, I don't know of anybody in your defense that is really, really good at conflict, and people are getting worse at it by the day,
Mm-hmm.
just simply due to the addiction to technology, the ease of text messaging somebody, the ease of sending an email and it being passive aggressive, the ease of just avoiding a hard, critical conversation. And if you weren't brought up in an environment and or a family culture to where you work through things, you agree to disagree. I mean, look at our political environment, and this isn't a political
Mm-hmm.
statement, but it's so polarizing. You're told to
Yeah.
choose one side or the other, and I don't believe, that's how America works, right? We are an agree to disagree and find common ground, and we make each other better. But nonetheless, from a conflict piece, I'll give you a little tidbit for anybody that's looking to raise their level of accountability as a leader, as a man. And leadership is a very broad term. There have been thousands of books and podcasts written about and talked about it and all that good stuff. And people always ask me, it's like, how do you hold people accountable? How do you embrace in hard conversations and conflict where that other person walks away better than you find them and you do as well? You don't engage in emotion. People give into the emotions way too much. And before you correct anybody, this is a key. This is very key. Before you correct anybody, you have to connect with that person. So, connect before you correct, right? And I
Mm, I
always
like
use
that.
I always use a sandwich method when it comes to conflict. First and foremost, understand like whoever it is that's sitting in that chair. It could be your wife, it could be your husband, it could be your employee, it could be also your CEO. Maybe you're going up levels, right? And you need to make sure you have a connection first, and then you do the sandwich. You basically you walk in and you talk about the things that are going well. Then in the
Mm-hmm.
middle, you talk about the things we need to work on. Then you bring it around and you talk about where we go from here and the greatness you see in them. Unless you're at that phase in a relationship to where you do have to let people go. And that's another thing, and again, that's for maybe a different time. People are so scared to let people go in their lives when that's honestly the best thing to do for them, and it's the best
Mm-hmm.
thing to do for you because your proximity equals influence. But going back to conflict, people just get all worked up. They haven't dealt with it really well. They haven't seen how, and it was never demonstrated in their home on how to deal with it. But just to keep it simple, connect before you correct. Connect before you communicate, because everybody communicates, very few connect, and that's really a good jumping off point, within my
Mm-hmm.
career and my business. And for me, I was brought up in modest beginnings. My parents, who are still married, thank goodness, my mother and father are, never really showed me how to resolve conflict in a marriage. They always fought behind closed doors. That's kind of how that
Mm.
worked, right? And
Yeah. And
but none
then
the
when you have arguments in your own relationship, you're like, well, my parents were perfect. They
oh
never fought. They never.
oh man, I have blown my marriage up more than once. I'm telling you, brother. Like my wife will tell you, and I don't know the rules around cussing on this show, but she she will tell you straight up, like those first 6 years of my marriage, I was a complete ass. I mean, I just
Yeah.
was very self-absorbed, very self-centered. it was all about me, but that's a part of the story too. So,
Mm-hmm.
when I got into the game, when I got into the business, as men, we are taught to benchmark ourselves on three things, and it's as simple. It's athletics, it's money, and it's sex. Those are the three simple things. Just think how we're marketed to in today's
Mm-hmm.
world. Think about watching the Super Bowl. Think about it's gambling, right? It's
Yep.
you know
It's got everything:
sport.
money,
It's
sex,
got everything.
and
Money,
athletics.
sex, I mean, in athletics, right? And
Yeah.
every bit of the advertising is it could be like the new electric vehicle that's coming out, the Ford Lightning or whatever it is. There's a
Mm.
status built around that aspect of it. So when you get in the game and you're an alpha like me, there's two sides of the alpha. There's the unhealthy side, and then of course there's the rebirth process that gets you to the healthy side. And a large
Mm-hmm.
part of my mission is to help those alphas be reborn because we have more men who continue to wear more masks. We have suicide rates going up, depression going up, and these are statistics in some of the most highly successful men on this planet on paper, on
Mm. Yeah.
paper. And so with that being said, a lot of lessons have been learned along the way. I call them crucible moments. And at 21, when I got in the game, I mean, I was making $18,000 a year. Like that's how I started. Like I didn't say, you know what, I'm going to get in and start making a half a million or 250 or what that number was. I got in on the ground floor and I wanted to learn selves. And that's what my dad did. My dad grew up dirt poor. He raised both of his brothers. His dad was not around most of his life. It was my
Mm.
grandmother working two jobs, right? So, for him to go up the ranks in his corporation, because that's all he knew. He didn't know entrepreneurship really. He just knew hard work, make money, take care of family. It's a middle class mindset, but he was the first in his bloodline to honestly break 100,000, 200,000, three hundred
Mm.
thousand. So he redefined that for the Rodgers family name because it has been riddled with divorce, drugs, and crime
Mm.
up to that point. So raising his two brothers, it puts a lot of perspective in me. And here he is busting his ass to give every opportunity to myself and my sisters. My mom was one of seven. She was the baby of
Mm.
seven from a traditional Italian Catholic family, the Paladinos, and raised on a farm, but their money was not of an importance in their life. It was the farm. It was the family. It was it's a very different, and my family's still very connected, just a very different lifestyle than what the American people really are
Mm.
get to see, right? And I get to live it every single day. So I got to see two different worlds really growing up. I got to see the world with my mother that it was church, it was family, it was Sunday meals, it was we got each other's back and stress was low, hence why my family's lived into their 90s and they
Mm.
eat farm to table food. And then I got to see the other side of high divorce rate, drugs, aunts and rehab, stuff like that, and my dad being the patriarch and ultimately seeing
Mm.
that. So as I get in the game, and that's where I'm going with this, that's what I was brought up. I was just like, okay, I'm just going to climb the corporate ladder because no one taught me what
Mm.
entrepreneurship looked like. I mean, in fourth grade, I was selling stuff out of my desk to kids in my class. I would make stuff at my house and sell it to them, and I would amass like mounts of quarters and money. And the teachers finally made me stop because I couldn't fit my books in there. I would literally, I'd sell them stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I always had that spirit, is what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
when I
Yeah.
got into it, though, it was one of those like, hey, my dad got me an opportunity in Nashville, Tennessee, and that's another key is people need to move outside of their zip code. You got to get
Mm.
uncomfortable, right? And it's really easy in today's
You hear that,
virtual
Ben?
environment. Yeah, it's really easy in today's virtual
I'm trying to get
environment.
Ben to move to Colorado here. So
Well, I'm interviewing someone from Colorado right now, and it's
okay, there you go.
but but yeah, so like get out of your zip code, and that was really
Mm.
good for me. And that was a time when there wasn't the iPhone. I mean, it was
Yeah.
2005, 2006. You had the big Garmins, and I didn't know where I was in
Yeah.
Nashville, Tennessee, but there
Right.
were just these little these little obstacles that became major victories, major cookie jar moments for me, like passing my insurance test at the time and navigating Nashville and creating a network and learning the art of effort. I mean, that it will trump talent all day long. And I got to see 18,000 grow to 42,000 and 42,000 grow to 100,000. And so that I got the taste, right? Like I got the understanding and the correlation that my effort will result in a reward, but there was eventually going to be a ceiling because of me working for corporate America.
Right.
And I didn't really like that. In addition to that, too, from 21 to 26, I mean, that's a very self-absorbed time of our lives, right? Like, I cared about money. I cared about
Yeah.
being rookie of the year. I cared about making headways and conquering goals and being, hey man, pound my chest when I go back to Little Rock. Like, look
Yeah.
at me, I can pick up the bar tab, baby. Cole's in
Yeah.
town, let's go party, right? So, to all you young bulls out there, it's one of those things you need to be very, very careful because along the way, what you don't realize is you start developing these insecurities, and it's tied right back to your ego, and it becomes really, really inflamed. And that's where I was really in those early 20s. And in the generation, I'm 39 years young. I'm on the back end of being a millennial.
Mm-hmm.
My group was brought up through the Adderall days. I mean, Adderall was the thing from 2001 to 2005 when you were studying, and
Yeah.
everybody could get it, right? Like it was one of those deals. And it's not me bragging; it's just the truth. What started
Yeah.
in the library became a party drug for everybody.
Mm.
And you didn't look at it like that. You're like, oh man, it's not oxy, it's nothing, it's not a hydro or anything
Yeah.
like that. I'm not putting a Percocet in a slushy. No, it's an Adderall. It's to give me
Got it from the
focus. Well,
doctor.
yeah, exactly. And I mean, anybody, go watch Dope Sick, that docu series. Go watch Dope Sick on stuff like that. But to that point, what I'm saying is you accumulate these habits, right?
Mm-hmm.
Habits and habit formation and is can work in two ways. You can either develop habits that are going to make you the GOAT, the greatest of all time, or you can develop habits that can make you the villain.
Mm.
Because, and again, that's where you are tricking yourself. And that was one of them. I would go to Adderall to give me an edge. I would go to Adderall to give me more focus because I was seeing upwards of 5,000 people per year face to face in what I was doing at that time, which gave
Mm.
me a lot of my emotional intelligence and social intelligence that I use today because every one of us communicate, but very few of us connect. And then when I
Right.
hit 27 and really to now, that's when, I met the woman of my dreams. And I met her when I was living in Raleigh, North Carolina. I took a promotion and it was within a big health insurer that everybody knows. But I was starting to get tired of I thought that I was going to climb this corporate ladder. Then I got to thinking in my mid 20s, and this was before podcasts were really real popular. I was like, man, I don't want to be like some of these people. Nothing against them. Like in 50, when I'm 50 or when I'm
Yeah.
60, and and I'm not being derogatory. Please
Yeah.
understand that because it's provided a lot of good livings for people, and it has for my family. So that's where I started really like questioning everything. It's like, man, I need to go out on my own. Like I'm going
Mm.
to be, and this is what I would tell every entrepreneur out there, anybody that's thinking about it, is you're going to be more disappointed in the things you didn't do 20 years from now than the things you
Yeah.
actually did do. And that's just the truth. As as the saying goes, discipline weighs in ounces, regret weighs in tons. But
Mm.
at that time, I was I was also ready to get married. I was also ready to start a family, and but that created its own level of challenges because that doesn't come with a playbook, right?
Yeah.
And so with that, Ashley and I ended up getting married, and I decided to cut the cord with corporate America, and I
Mm.
decided to go at 27, pretty much on my own, strike out on my own adventure in the insurance business, developed my own business. That was my core business. And I've always had a burning passion to help people from high school to junior high. I was that guy looking out for the underdog because I was an underdog myself. I got the crap kicked out of me on the bus, you know, after basketball games by upperclassmen. So I was, I was bullied. So I always have had an affinity, to help others maximize their potential and stand up,
Mm-hmm.
to the big bad wolf, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I've always had that burning desire, but I always told myself, not yet, not yet. And I think that's another fallacy that we buy into, is that we think success is a certain destination. It's like when I hit 30 or when I hit 35 and I hit 38 or whatever that number you have in your mind, then I'll give myself permission
Right.
to do this, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
crap, because this life is fragile. You have no clue when
Yeah.
that 1 second will be up.
We're
So for
not
those
promised
first
tomorrow.
no, and for those first 6 years, it's definitely from 27 to 33. It was the most trying times up to this point in my life,
Mm.
and I wasn't necessarily equipped as a man to handle it. What I would do is I'd push it down. I would have Jack and Coke when I'd come home. In that first 3 years in particular in the business, I wasn't making any money. And
Mm.
my wife and I were married. I blew out my Achilles playing basketball. I had two
Oh
surgeries,
man.
and I spent a week in the hospital. Almost lost my right leg due to a staph infection.
Wow.
Right, and I would literally have my mom drive me around because it was my right foot, and I would cold call on businesses. I would crutch up and cookie call businesses, and she'd be in the car, and then we go to the next one, then we go to the next one, then we go to the next one, and I'll never forget, after my daughter Ava Madison was born, she flatlined, and it was a year after my wife and I had gotten married. And she had flatlined. You would have thought that would have woke me up, but what it did is it accelerated. And she's fine. She's great. She's a gift from God. Like the girl's going to do amazing things. But it just accelerated everything because I had to feed I had to feed another mouth. My
Mm.
wife was an accountant, and here I am, not making very much money at all. And I remember that Christmas having to return a barbecue magazine because we needed the money for her formula. And I wouldn't ask for
Mm.
money from my parents, and she wouldn't ask money from her parents. But what we did during our marriage, and that's the key here, is that, and I see this in a lot of men of all ages, is that it's really, really easy to focus on the easy stuff. It's really, really hard to focus on the things you actually need to put your attention to.
Yeah.
And that was me actually self healing. That was me ripping the band aids off of the scars on my heart, which that's what people do throughout their life. They put
Mm-hmm.
duct tape, scar, band aids, whatever they want to do, and they push that stuff down and it just leaks out. So I got really addicted to lying to her, and it was just due to shame, right? Like it was just due to shame. But and I'm glad that we experienced that part of our lives because it tested every fiber of our marriage, and then our son was born, and I started making some more money. The business started growing, and it started ginning upwards, but I was still dealing with this dark side of my soul, the self
Yeah.
sabotage side of my soul. If Cole, your bank account reaches 500,000, or your income gets to 1 million, or whatever that number is, everything should take care of itself, right? Like she should be happy. You're giving her the lifestyle. She's getting to stay home with the kids. And then what you become though through that is a very entitled man.
Mm.
There's a lot of entitlements in this world. Welfare isn't just from the government. We
Mm.
feed ourselves welfare every single day in a bunch of lies and bullshit. And that's just where I was. So needless to say, I was brought to my knees, and we started therapy. It was the greatest thing. And then I told myself, and this is where it really gets fun and interesting. I said, if I am to if I am to save this thing, then I've got to do something that I've never done before to have something I've never had before.
Mm.
And that was freedom for me because I was miserable. I mean, I had set records in my business, from where I was in the industry compared to industry benchmark. I had accomplished everything I saw in my mind's eye, but my marriage was complete shit.
Mm.
Like it was
Mm.
just so when that's off, everything else is off. And then when I needed an edge, guess what? I mean, I'll put it to you this way, guys. Like when she was pregnant with my son, I took her to Oxford, Mississippi. I went out while she was pregnant. She didn't know it. I didn't know it. I went out and partied all night, only for me to come back in, for her to wake up and me make a cup of coffee and me act like I hadn't been gone, only to get pulled over by a state trooper on the way back and him to look at me and say, "I'm going to let you out of this because she's giving you the death stare." So that's just where I
Oh, right.
was, and I would do these things to sabotage
Mm,
myself because I felt I wasn't worthy of success
mm,
internally,
mm-hmm,
right? A lot
mm,
of us want to we'll crank up that internal thermostat to 100, but we'll figure out a way to cool ourselves back down to 60 because of the upper limit effect. And so it was just this civil war for goodness gracious. It just seemed like I'd have 90 to 120 days and be great. And then that dark side of the soul would lurk in and I would just basically just fall in line with whatever it wanted to do. And so what I decided to do was I hadn't ran a mile in 3 years because of the Achilles tear.
mm-hmm.
Super nervous. Is my left Achilles going to blow? But I just knew I had to do something radical and chase after my future self. I had this vibrant vision of my future self.
Mm.
Love life was in the tank, the whole 9 yards. So I decided to link up with a group of SEALs out of Southern California and went on a journey that's just incredible and ended up graduating from a 3 day simulation of Hell Week. And I was
Mm.
one of 9 out of 50 to do that.
Oh, wow.
It required I was 1 out of 9 out of 50, and it's a big story in and of itself. Uh, But what it taught me over 18 months is the importance of developing a future self, believing in that future self. You're not going to be an overnight success, and trusting the
Mm-hmm.
process. It takes time and really force functioning yourself and developing these environments that were going to produce the results you most desire. And that's
Mm-hmm.
where things started turning for me because I had to sober up to the fact that, man, if I don't get this together, it doesn't matter how much money I make, I'm about to lose everything that's really important to me.
Mm, gotcha. So it's almost
Mm.
like some of those experiences really taught you like what really mattered to you that maybe you didn't even realize like how important those relationships were to you until you didn't have them. Is that kind of what happened?
100%. I
Yeah.
think that's for all of us, right?
Oh,
Like
yeah, for
until
sure.
something's taken away from us, we
Yeah.
don't realize how much we love it.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
that experience that you had, was that the main like turning point for you doing that, the experience with the SEALs? Was that like, I mean, obviously there's a lot of contributing factors, but is that when you started to be like,
Yeah.
man, like that was a good turning point for you?
It was. It
Yeah.
was. Well, and here's what really happened. So, we put ourselves in therapy. I am in deep therapy, working on myself.
Mm,
Yeah, I was fueled with a lot of rage and anger, which a lot of men are.
mm,
I never, I never was clinically depressed.
mm-hmm,
I was just, it was one of those things, man. I'm a junkie when it
mm,
comes to accomplishing goals
mm-hmm,
and performance, and there's a dark side to that too,
mm-hmm. Yeah,
right?
for sure.
And there really is. And anyway, so with that, really what the turning point was is that as we were going through the event, you're partnered up, and it's called your swim buddy. Wherever you go, he goes, vice versa, right? And Kirk was my swim buddy because we're both short, so we're put on the short crew. It's called the Smurf crew. Yeah. So at the very end, though, he passed away at my feet, and we had been through 3 days of hell together. He left his beautiful wife, two beautiful
Mm,
sons, and here I am. I cleaned that man up. I, I went, like I said, I went to hell and back. And when he passed, and I wear a necklace, I don't have it on me right now, but I wear a necklace with him pretty much every single day to remind myself that nothing's promised, like we
wow.
talked about earlier. And I saw a man die living and give himself, his heart gave out.
Wow,
His heart literally gave out.
man.
Wow.
And so here's where the pivot, here's where the turning point came. I was very lonely at that time, which is another thing you'll start seeing in a lot of men in their late 30s,
Yeah.
early 40s, or their circles and their proximities are totally outdated.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They're just so scared to leave these people behind. For me, it was I was still very lonely. I was still not telling 100% of the truth to Ashley.
Mm-hmm.
Still ashamed about a few things.
Sure.
Well, after he passed, my story here to Little Rock circulated, and I was asked to come on the largest radio show here locally. So I did. And for 2.5 hours, I told them everything. And I mean, everything. Things that I'm not sharing on here. Things that were shared in therapy and things that weren't shared in therapy. And guess who was listening? My beautiful wife.
Mm.
And I had crushed her again. And, that's called cognitive dissonance. She didn't want to, I wasn't getting paid. It's not like it was making me any money. So I wasn't trying to create this false bravado, but I just sit here and watched a man die at my feet. It was time for me to liberate myself. Like there was no excuses. There's no turning back. It's burn the boats, right? And so I felt like I got on my mic just like this. And I just said, I'm going for it. I'm just going for it. There's one person that needs to hear this. And man, I remember getting off of that radio show. I was like, oh my God, that was so incredible. It felt so good, free. And I get that
you
call.
got
I
home.
mean, boom, I get the text message. Don't even come home. I'll see you Monday in JC McDaniel's office. There she was crying again.
Geez.
There I was on the other end of the couch. And that's when the journey honestly began.
Wow.
Right? Because, we worked with a lot of guys in Psalm. And this is for all you ladies out there that listen to. So everything I talk about is universal, plain and simple, because a lot of your listeners are going to be married, so you want to know how we tick. You want to understand how this game works, especially from an entrepreneur and a man's perspective, especially those that take great pride in being providers. That what if mindset can get really nasty at times. What if I lose this client? What if, this specific vendor doesn't fulfill this order in this time, so therefore cash flow dries up. You can get really trapped in that box of fear real quick, right? And that's a part of the process, is a part of the journey. But if you don't have anywhere to go with that, man, it is a war. It's a civil war in your brain and in your heart. And I say all that because that's basically where I was at that time, is that you can mistake movement with progress. You can, due to the things that are easy, it's easy to focus on the stuff that makes you feel good in the moment.
Yeah.
A lot of men have no want to get into their heart. They don't want to talk about maybe being sexually abused at 12, or maybe they're a perfectly flawed dad, right? And that's where I typically see when I'm executive coaching, is like, you got to start with the heart set, because that's where everything flows from. That's where everything, that's where you're going to get better and healed. And it just takes time. And that's the other thing, is like, at that time I was like, I've been married 6 years. I was fortunate enough that she just didn't take everything with her, including the kids. But there's no timetable on the process at that point. Just like business, right? You're a 20-year overnight success. There's not an Amazon Prime button for this stuff. So you better just dig in. You better go old school with it, right? You're not only going to have to work harder, you're going to have to work smarter at that point.
Yeah.
And the only thing that will cure what I was going through, just like for anybody else that's listening, is action and showing up, consistently showing up, and reciprocating without expecting anything in return. Being blissfully detached. That's the hardest thing any of us as humans can do. So that was really where it all happened when I look back 6 years from now. And last year, Ben, where it all came to fruition, it took me 6 years to get to this, where my daughter laid her head on my chest and said, "You're the best man in the world."
Wow.
That was worth every bit.
Wow.
That was
worth all the work right there.
Worth every bit of it, but
Yeah.
pain converted the right way is the most beautiful things in your life. It's the vantage points on the path. It's what this world's made of, and business and entrepreneurship. It all falls in line with it. But if you don't have this stuff in order, you're going to look up and you sold your soul.
Yeah.
And you're never free.
Well, yeah, and to me too, it's just a good reminder that all those things in your life help you become the person that you're supposed to be, and it
Hmm.
gives you the testimony and the wisdom, down the road. And I think that a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we always want to be further along than we are. We compare ourselves to other businesses and other people, and we're like,
Hmm.
oh, they started, 2 years after me, and now they've surpassed me. And then you have a lot of this self, doubt and pity, and sometimes you just need to remind yourself that you're on your own journey, and that you have a purpose in this world, and you may not be the same purpose as the person next to you. It's unique to you, and it's important for you to wake up every day, do your best, and keep moving forward.
You said it beautifully. It comparison, of course, is the thief of all joy. And the
Mm-hmm.
minute that I quit seeking validation from others, which in and of itself is another addiction. I'm not saying that, I mean, praise is a good thing. You want to be told you're doing a good job, in particular by those that you value their opinion more so than
Mm-hmm.
anything. I think of our spouses and those people in our life that when they say something, it means something, right? But I was finding myself early on, you know, needing to get my emotional boost from other people, and that's no way to live. As an entrepreneur, as a business owner, quit the comparison. I mean, you're on the path, plain and simple. And I'm just one of those that believes in the slowest move, smoothest fast model.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as you're making gains, like we talked about on the top of the show, versus you're looking at the gaps of your life, even if it's 1%, you're winning.
Mm-hmm.
Plain and simple, you're
Mm-hmm.
winning. Quit, get off Instagram, get off Facebook, get off Twitter or anything else, and quit trying to live someone else's life because you have no clue who that person is. I have no true. There's been such a mixture now of false reality into reality that some people, I mean, it's been devastating to their emotional health. So just keep in mind, if you've got everything that you need right now, that's all you specifically need in life,
Mm-hmm.
right? I was talking to a fellow entrepreneur the other day who's in the real estate business, owns a successful real estate company here locally, has offices all across Central Arkansas, etc. And they're struggling right now just because of the market, interest rates,
Yeah.
so on and so forth. And he said, "Man, it's the most challenging time I've experienced in my career right now. It's humbling, but it's the most rewarding too, and there's a lot of opportunity." And that says a lot, about his character and his resiliency. But at the same time, he's like, "Man, I would really like to have a bourbon with you just to sit down and talk, right?" And but he has this deep belief system, everything's going to be okay. He's not comparing himself to other real estate companies. He's not looking at other people's YouTube videos or anything like that. He is focused on his plan and he's executing on his plan. But he also admits that he too needs someone to confide in and to talk to
Mm-hmm.
as well,
Mm-hmm.
which is important because in the world that we live in, people are always concentrating on the how when you really need to focus on the who. Your who is going to help you conquer the how.
So it sounds like, one key takeaway here, and you kind of mentioned this, right, is that we all need people in our lives who we can confide in,
Mm-hmm.
and people who we can trust, um, to remind us that we're not alone, and to kind of encourage us to keep going. I think a lot of times, especially as business owners or entrepreneurs, we don't want our secret sauce to get out, and so it's like, all right, well, I don't want to share any of my stuff with somebody else,
It's a
because
scarcity mindset.
yeah, totally. And I think, it sounds like what you're saying is that, it's important to surround yourself with other people who can push you up, and
Yeah,
keep you moving
it's
forward.
your network is your net worth, right? And a lot of times entrepreneurs they become the best in the room and they stay that in that room for the rest of their life. When you're the best in the room, you got to find a new room. You got to go get your
Mm.
ass kicked, and you do. You have to go get your ass kicked. The best thing for me is when I walk into a room, and I want to be around 1% men and women. And what I mean by that is not necessarily that they're worth 100, $200 million on a private jet and blah, blah. I don't give a crap about any of that. The true measure of a person is the level of impact he or she's willing to have on those around them. That's the true measure of a person. You know who they are. They don't have to give you their resume. They don't have to spew all over you on all their awards and accolades when you ask them what you do, who are you, and all that. No, they got a different level of depth. Like they're the most interesting person in the room. They got a just incredible energy. But it goes back to they're in a proximity that really requires that. And your proximity is influence. And the other thing is too, they're not scarcity people. And a 1% man is not a scarce man. He's an abundant man. He wants to share. Take my ideas. Good luck, right? Like if you want to try to replicate some and what we've done and we've built over 6 years, good luck. However, we're an abundance group. We're here to help other people, be successful, more successful than they were yesterday. If you can gain something from it, some insight, make your program better, cool. I'm all for it, man. Rock and roll, right? And just life is too damn short to not do life with people that are doing it the right way. You know what I mean?
Yep, absolutely.
So but yeah, man, that's the big ticket there.
Yeah.
When you're the best in the room, find a new room.
I like that. Could you tell us a little bit about more about School of Man, about your book as well as your organization and what your mission is?
Yeah, so it's a very simple mission, guys. It's to create better men by helping them focus on what matters most. The tactics we use to do that is it's multifaceted. Number one, it goes back to that network. It ties right back into your self-worth. We have over 30,000 men involved in some form or fashion. So a few things that we do, of course, are our venture-based events, the crucibles, which require a man to be reborn. Those are big, challenging, get your heart rate up. The other one is our accelerator program, our brotherhood program. Men across the country come together and work through our 4 phases: freshman, sophomore, junior, senior level phase together, which is a specific curriculum we have built over time. Then, of course, I mentioned fuel. It's to help men keep the old man out of the body. You get younger while everybody else gets older. And then what's the most popular is our battle guy training. Put down the shotgun, pick up the rifle, and it allows you to zero in on the things that matter most, and you can move towards your target a lot faster. And then on my book, I mean, it's me and the men of Psalm, so it's not just me. That's a part of my legacy. It's us being raw and real. You hear every bit from the men and their experience within Psalm, but their life. I mean, you're going to hear from men that are Southwest airline pilots, doctors. You're going to hear from men that are plumbers, etc., just pouring their soul out to you on paper. Some of the most bravest and courageous things that I saw these men do. And that's in that book, School of Man, A Man's Guide to Living Legacy, Living, Loving, and Legacy. So, it's my legacy. It's a part of who I am. When I look back, who's going to call me the GOAT? That's how I reverse engineer from. That's what's so important to me.
We like to leave our listeners with, some action items. And, as with you interact with a lot of different people and you see a lot of holes, whether it's in their routines or their systems or processes. What are you seeing as far as like what's most lacking out there? And, what would you encourage someone to start making forward progress? What would you encourage them to start focusing on right away and, taking action?
Write a letter to your former self. Step 1. Identify who that former self is, the attributes that you do not care for, but the attributes you got to carry with you. And seriously put pen to paper. I don't want you to type it. I don't want you to do anything with technology. I use technology just like everybody else, but to advance my business purposes. Number 1 is to write a letter to your former self. Number 2 is to identify who that future self is. Okay. Then number 3 is draw a line between the two of them. Put 4 specific key milestones, etc., that you need to hit to get to that person. That's the process right there. That's the tactic that I promise you will get you moving in the right direction.
That's great. Yeah, I like awesome. That. It's good good quality, easy action item to do, and then you got to put it into action.
Hey, insight without action is worthless. So
that's right.
Everything flows from action, guys. I can't thank you enough for having me.
Absolutely.
Hey, Ben, what are your top takeaways from this conversation that we've had?
There's a lot of good ones, but I'll say a couple here. One is sometimes we forget all the great things in our life because we focus on the gaps. It's important to connect with someone before you correct them. When you're the best in the room, you need to find a new room, and you'll regret more the things you didn't do in your life than the things that you did do. Awesome.
That's great. I love it. I think this was a great motivating episode. So go ahead and check out Cole's website. What's a good website people can reach you at if they want to get in contact with you?
Schoolofman.live. Take the free Battle Guide Challenge. It's a 7-day challenge. You'll love it. You can find me all over social, but in particular on LinkedIn. Follow me on LinkedIn.
All right. Sounds good. Well, hey, go to thefridayhabit.com to find show notes for this episode. There you can also find links to our websites and ways to get in touch. And at the bottom of the page, you can download our guide to the Friday Habit system that will show you how to set apart one full day each week to dedicate working on your business instead of in your business.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a review in the Apple Podcast app. And if you have a question or a topic you'd like us to cover, don't forget to record us a quick voice memo and send it to hello@thefridayhabit.com.
That's right. Thanks for listening. And remember, live every day like it's Friday.